Viewers of Entrepreneurship TV, welcome to today's show. In today's show, we have invited Masimba Marangwanda. Masimba Marangwanda is a director with long and still making company in Zimbabwe. He is here to discuss with us the general state of business and the economy. Masimba, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on this nice, chilly, breezy Sunday morning.
Masimba, the last time we spoke, you had given us progress in terms of what was happening within your organization, and it has been a while now. I would want to start off from there. What has been happening within your organization?
Well, last time we spoke, we were having coffee, and it was time before COVID decided to take over. So, a lot of things have obviously changed ever since then. Strategies have changed. Directions of companies have changed. How the outlook of how we see business has changed. So right now, we've all just pretty much been coming out of this lockdown mode, trying to establish how we can try and end 2020. As a business, we've asked ourselves a few questions to say, how much of our targets can we still be able to achieve? Are we completely writing off this year, or are we going to push for as much as possible? We still feel that there's something to be salvaged, and the notion in the business is that the strategy should still remain, but we should just be quicker to executing and bringing more value to clients. It's tough right now. Budgets are tight for clients. People are not spending as much, and rightfully so. So you need to put value propositions like any other business for people to come and start spending again.
Masimba, my next question, I was going to focus on the economy, but maybe before we can talk about the whole economy, let's focus on the manufacturing sector. What has been happening within the manufacturing sector?
Right now, we would be, you actually just reminded me that I actually meant to call Sekai to just find out as CZI, what are their members saying? Because it's everyone trying to get back into the market. I've been talking to a few colleagues in the manufacturing who are saying they are struggling to get raw materials. Remember, unfortunately, we are very dependent on our neighbor for raw material trade, and them also coming out into lockdown will be trying to stimulate their own demand. So it's going to be interesting times. I can't say for sure. That's why I wanted to call Sekai to get an understanding of top line, the CZI. What is the general feel of manufacturing? I think it might just be a bit too early as well. Maybe the indicators will be, more prominent towards end of July, early August for people to see how manufacturing is looking right now, and we might actually have some solid numbers maybe in Q3. Right now, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what direction we take.
Interesting with that submission, Masimba. I've spoken to a number of guys who have said, in as much as we may want to rely on local production and local manufacturing and taking advantage of the lockdown, because we do not have our own raw materials, we're still going to have that as a bottleneck or an arbitrage around the manufacturing companies. Do you think that's going to be the same?
True. That is it. And I think I put a tweet during the lockdown to that effect to ask the question, why are we not doing, backward integration? Why are companies not saying, all right, since because you see, when someone says raw material, it means that they're producing either a semi or finished product. And the question I was asking is, our business is now asking the question to say, why don't I start investing in the raw material itself? Is manufacturing having conversation with banks to say we need to fund this? So if you're a tissue making company, are you now saying to the bank we need to go or combine with other tissue manufacturers to go and buy a plantation, right, to run the raw material that you need to do? And it's such an important question because COVID has shown us that the dependency is it's dangerous for us to progress like this, especially considering that we are actually a manufacturing company. Companies now need to ask the question on their value chain, can we not backward integrate and try and find some form of control? It don't happen overnight, but some form of control on our raw materials, so we start producing on our own and reduce the need to import. But also, it's not only an issue of our ability to produce, but ability to produce cost effectively. Because remember, at the end of the day, you still need to produce and sell this thing on the market. And if you're going to fail to do so, then it's going to be a problem.
Masimba, allow me to be a bit unfair on the local manufacturing and production companies. It seems after the coming in of COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of companies suddenly have found themselves manufacturing and or producing COVID-19 related products like sanitizers and some of these things. Would one be fair to say we lack the initiative to start and do some of these things without being pushed by circumstances?
That's an interesting question. But yeah, I guess when you think about it, it's your push is always the demand. Okay. So if you were doing sanitizers and face masks prior to COVID-19, was there any actual demand for you to do these things, right? That's the question. But I somewhat understand where you're coming from. To say, if you look at the holistic picture, are there other products that we can start producing locally without the need to be pushed? Are we that type of economy? And sometimes I think there are a lot of factors that boil into it. Mainly the fear of investing in something that might not succeed because people don't really have the disposable income to invest in it. You know what I mean? So for sanitizers and face masks, I guess it's an example that's happening world over, right? China, that were probably the biggest producers of these things, was now struggling to even to deal with demand globally. And as that was happening, each individual country was now saying, can we not produce something like this? And everyone still struggles with the demand. So I hear your question, I see where it's coming from, but it's very difficult in this environment for you and I to say, let's go and produce something and that we feel that not anyone else is doing, with no guarantee that you'd be able to succeed. So that's my opinion.
Now let's talk about the state of the economy. My question would want to focus on, I strongly believe our economy has not been doing well, and COVID-19 has not helped the situation. But my fear and challenge is the informal sector seems to be affected more than most of the sectors. Are we going to experience any growth, or are the business people going to get clients? Because the lockdown rules seem to be saying only those that are working should be getting into town. Now, some of their clients may necessarily not be people who are working, but they do provide the necessary disposable income, if I may say, to cushion these companies. Do you think our government has done its homework in terms of just allowing employees only to get into town?
So let's break down your question. First, you talk about the potential of growth after COVID-19. And I'll take you to a very simple example from last year. It took a cyclone in Manicaland for us to register negative growth. Now, imagine how this is going to affect us. I don't anticipate any form of growth at the end of this trading year, to be very honest with you. We are still battling with the effects of Cyclone Idai. Now we've got COVID-19, and I don't see how government is going to see any potential growth. Then secondly, you talk about the informal sector. And I pray the government has learned a lesson from this, that the need for us to get people into formal employment is going to be key going forward. Informal sector, it's needed, it's important, but ours is just too big to sustain the economy. Okay, and we've felt it now, because if we had a lot of people who were under formal employment and we had to go into lockdown, there would have been enough social fail safes from NASA, your employment funds and other pension funds to support people sitting at home, but which has been very difficult to happen, right? Why? Because these people live hand to mouth, okay? And the government is, when they put that 2% transaction tax, this is how they managed to tap into the informal sector paying tax in advance. Now, when they don't trade, when they don't move money through, your EcoCash, because that's how they were doing it, they see the dip in their tax revenue. So I don't see us having any form of growth this year like we struggled with any form of growth last year. The informal sector needs to be looked at. It needs to be controlled. We need to get people into jobs. This is the honest truth. Formal employment is the only way we can grow this economy. Formal employment is the only way we can grow a middle class, right? Policy that government puts out, it needs to ensure that let companies make money. This is what I always believe. Let companies make money. If they make money, they always give back to you because you've put the policy to help them make money. And even when we started the pandemic, not a lot of companies were coming out to say we are willing to support and donate to government. Like I was paying attention a lot to how South Africa was doing it through podcasts, listening to 702 when in South Africa it happened, trying to mirror how they're dealing with the response and how we were dealing with the response. And you get a lot of companies coming out to say we are not even big companies, not even listed companies, but Entrepreneur Couch would have just easily said, we are going to donate to our local clinic in the area we live in. They need support. And you would have had the capacity to do it because your business can fund it out of its CSR. But a lot of businesses were struggling cash-wise. So, the obvious thing they were going to do when the pandemic started, when they started seeing lockdown after lockdown, reserve your cash, spend less. Now, how do you just go out and say, right, we're going to donate $100,000 for a project when your own board is probably telling you guys, let's save and recover as much cash? So I hope I've answered that question of yours.
As a follow-up question, interestingly, you've talked about government needs to look at formal employment. Now, the challenge then would be, if you look at a lot of informal businesses that we've been having, they've not been there by choice. It is because the formal employment half the time has failed to absorb some of these people. Would one be forgiven to think then that government actually needs to come up with policies to support informal small businesses to scale them up, but not only that, to also encourage them to formalize?
Remember, I think we touched this on our first interview. You mentioned the if government was doing enough for SMEs. Okay, SMEs are very important, but like I said last time, and I'll say it again, I don't see the SME ministry pushing their policies enough, which gets me thinking: are they not in a position where they feel like they cannot resource SMEs? What type of policies do they have? We don't know, right? We're not very clear on their position. And I don't know if maybe I missed something, but of late I haven't really heard the SME ministry. I think they made a statement once, but that is about it. You see a lot of information coming out of industry and commerce, trying to relay a message to industry to say, formal businesses, this is the direction we need to take. And that's why you have even CZI coming in with their position paper to try and say, government, this is where the dialogue is there. I don't see SMEs. I don't hear about SMEs. And that brings out the question: if the policy that is currently there for SMEs, is it wrong if it's not being implemented? Because we don't know. Do you understand? So I feel that we've got a lot of policies that we probably are sitting on, but we don't really know how to evaluate its effectiveness if it's not being implemented. So I even after our interview, and that's why I remember that question, because it got me thinking, and I was like, I'm not seeing the traction for SMEs.
Thanks very much, Masimba, for that. Now we need to move on to the regional economy. You have touched on the South African economy affecting our own economy. What's your view? What's going to happen? Because my understanding is South African economy has got its own challenges, and we are relying on South African economy, but not only Zimbabwe. It seems a lot of other regional countries may be relying on South Africa. To what extent would the South African impact affect the rest of the regional economies?
And it's in a big way. When South Africa went into lockdown, um, we all felt it. And let's not lie to each other. Everyone would listen to Cyril when he used to speak. And it's not because we were concerned about how they would do their internal lockdown. We knew that there was an impact on how we would trade. Yesterday, I was having breakfast with a friend of mine, and she said, and she's an SME, and she said, I cannot get stock for my clients ever since South Africa went into lockdown because South Africa's demand alone has affected my business. So she's scaled down her business. So regionally, when the economies open up, Botswana relies on South Africa, Namibia relies on South Africa, Zimbabwe relies on South Africa, Mozambique relies on South Africa, DRC, Zambia. We are all going to turn to this one economy to say, feed us, right? That's going to take quite a bit of strain on them to do that. That's going to push up quite a bit of demand into their economy. And we will feel that impact one way or the other. It ties into your question. Can we not start producing our own raw materials? Can we not look for alternatives for sourcing market? And when you look at that as a region, you see the impact of South Africa in SADC, and you can't ignore it. And South Africa has its own challenges as an economy. Right now, if you look at the COVID cases in South Africa, they're not really flattening out yet, but they're having to find a way of opening the economy because now they feel the government is feeling the pitch that there's no money in the fiscus. Okay, and that means that we're going to struggle to support our people, to social welfare, to health, etc. So they would make decisions that internally help them first and foremost, okay, before they start listening to everyone else. And this is where we are right now.
As a follow-up to that, do you think then there are any lessons that these neighboring countries would learn from this, such that going forward, in the event that an eventuality like this happens, they would be less reliant on South Africa?
Of course, we need to now look at how our economies can start self-supporting each other. What can Zimbabwe do for Mozambique? What can Zambia do for Zimbabwe? What can Botswana do for Namibia? And the truth is that our leaders know each other first name basis. They meet for a lot of talks, and they talk about the economy, and they need to have this discussion to say, based off the impact of COVID-19, this pandemic, if we are to meet the very same thing 100 years from now, that generation needs to be able to sustain itself. Okay, as a regional bloc, we're not saying we should close our borders and be self-sufficient, but we now need to be able to look at ways of integrating our economies to counter support each other and not put so much weight on one economy. And that is going to be very, very important. How they do it, if they even see the importance of it, is going to be important. It might be a conversation we need to also drive as businesses to governments to say, look at the impact of what's happened. Do you want to be broke again like this 100 years from now? Are we wanting to leave our great-grandchildren in the same predicament we were 100 years from now? So it's going to be important for policymakers to now start having this conversation on a government-to-government level. It's also going to be important for us as businesses to look at the impact and how it affected us vis-a-vis how we can bring government into the discussion or governments into the discussion.
Masimba, thanks very much for what we've discussed so far. To our international viewers across the globe, we're just going to go for a short break. When we come back, we are going to continue talking to Masimba. We are going to focus now on the international economy. We're also going to talk about the corporate social responsibility, and we're going to talk about KuchengetanaTrust. Stay tuned, and we'll be back soon. welcome back.
Thanks a lot, Chip.
Masimba, we've talked about the local Zimbabwean economy. We have talked about the regional economy, focusing on South Africa. Now I would want to push you back onto the international economy. China has been the economy that a lot of economies have been relying on, and it seems to have been getting a lot of pressure in terms of the requirements coming from a lot more different countries. Going forward, do you think China is going to continue being able to supply some of these requirements coming from different countries?
I think they can. I think China's got the muscle. China's got the economies of scale. I think what's going to happen is the international community is going to ask themselves the question, or can we not start doing these things on our own and relying less on China? And the thing you can't ignore about China is their cost of production. Those guys are brilliant. Their economies of scale is off this chart. But let's think about it. India has got, labor. I now believe they've hit over 1 billion people, citizens in their economy. And look at countries like Nigeria. Can we not wrap up production, not for everything, but to look at how China got to where they are and identify certain key items that the world needs, so we reduce the dependency on China, but also trying to find a cost-effective way of doing it. It's such a difficult question because of where China is. They're at a scale that we all probably never thought they would get to it 10, 15 years ago. And that is why even for America, they've become a trade threat to their own economy. And America is no joke. So I think China will, eventually when it gets back on its feet, will be able to deal with world demand. It's just going to depend on how individual economic blocks decide to say, as the EU, how are we going to reduce our dependency? As an African bloc, as the EU, how are we going to reduce our dependency on China?
Past COVID-19, assuming then things are going to go back to normal, and we have got China having to deal with supplying the whole world, but they also have got their own local demand and pushing it forward. South Africa also depends on China. What do you think is going to happen in terms of delay on the supply chain?
Back to the question that my friend said yesterday over breakfast, and she was saying that her products she gets out of South Africa are manufactured in China. So you can't ignore China. And once China starts producing, countries like South Africa are going to try and satisfy their own local demand before they start talking about bringing products into other countries. So it's going to have an impact. How quickly production can be ramped up and logistics to step up in terms of bringing products back into the market is going to be another key element. So it's going to take a while, and that's why, like I said earlier on, even though I was talking about our own local industry, only when we hit maybe August, October will we have a glimpse of how we are trying to recover as economies. All right. And I think governments have now got to a point where they said, cases or no cases, we need to open our economies. We now need to treat this as a new normal until a vaccine is found. So only then will we be able to see globally to say, how is trade going to be? You know that publications like Financial Magazine, the Harvard Business Review, they're all going to be pushing out a lot of articles towards that time to say, this is where the global market is in terms of trade, in terms of recoveries, in terms of shipping, in terms of logistics, in terms of everything. So it's going to be, right now it's way too early for us to say. We anticipate delays. It's expected, okay? How we recover is going to be important. That helps the planning part. So we'll probably know in a couple of months.
Thanks very much for that, Masimba. We're just going to go for another short break. When we come back, we're now going to focus on corporate social responsibility and talking about KuchengetanaTrust. Our global viewers, can you stay tuned? We're going to be back again very soon. our global viewers, welcome back to our third and final segment of the show. Today we've got Masimba. Masimba is a director with Longden Steelmaking Company, which is in Zimbabwe. We're discussing about the state of the economy. We're also going to talk about corporate social responsibility. Masimba, welcome back.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me back.
Masimba, COVID-19 has actually made us realize that there is a lot that corporates can do towards alleviating and or helping within the communities where they live. Do you think corporates have done enough in terms of helping people within their communities?
I think corporates have come together very strongly over COVID. That much I will not lie to you. A lot of companies, some in their small ways, have been helping communities, helping people to try and survive through these tough times. And remember, we've got a very large informal sector, and when that informal sector was shut down, they feel the pinch the most. They don't have savings, they don't have something to fall back on, and companies have come out trying to help as much as possible, and it's been something that's been impressive to look. And I'm not talking about companies coming in to help with hospitals because we're dealing with a health issue. I'm talking about companies just helping in social welfare, food packs, helping with balls. Also, then they've been assisting, like our company, we've been working with NGOs who have been trying to go into economies to pretty much help out people. So I think companies, to the best of their abilities, they did their part, because this is something that's affected all of us. Apana has one or two relatives who are in need, and when you look at it and you look at your own staff, you know that they're also equally going to struggle trying to do black tax, and people in rural areas also saying, look, because that's where they all get their livelihoods. So I think for our small economy, I think companies have really done well to try and respond to what's been happening.
Whilst we still on corporate social responsibility, I would want us to focus on the ICT companies and counters. They seem to have been enjoying a very healthy run. Do you think this is going to continue? And do you also think they've done enough in terms of corporate social responsibility?
They had an amazing time, I suppose. I'm curious what the Portras numbers are going to say in terms of the demand in data usage over this period of time. And I believe, that was there. Right now, some companies are pushing out, data packages that are reasonably priced for education, where it's them responding to this, to say, we know people are at home, people need entertainment, but they're now online classes, and it's expensive for you to be paying for normal Wi-Fi and normal data, so they're giving out these packages. So it's been interesting for them. I think they've done well to respond. I know for a fact South Africa, when went into lockdown, the tech companies were struggling with the upsurge of demand, right? Because companies were now working from home, and they did that lockdown. I think they responded quite well to it. We saw a lot of people going online and working from home, but it's been managed quite well. Have they done enough to then invest that in the communities? I can't say for sure. I'll be lying. But I take it that with the amount of money they were making, surely they were throwing some back to the community.
Masimba, my final question in this segment, we're going to focus now on your own active participation when it comes to corporate social responsibility. You have been involved with the KuchengetanaTrust as a trustee.
Yeah.
Would you briefly tell us what prompted that noble cause, and what have you done so far in as far as KuchengetanaTrust is concerned?
Kuchengetana was started by Samantha. Samantha was working out of Chitungwiza. I got a call from a friend of mine, early stages, who said, look, there's this lady in Chitungwiza who's doing this great thing. And of late, I've been also asking myself in my personal capacity, what am I doing to help out in society. I went over to see her, and I realized that she was doing great work feeding people. It was in the early stage, and then I just said to her, "Look, I think you're going to need help in terms of just finding resources and talking to people, and just keep this thing going." The relief kitchen was started specifically to help people in the Unity A of Chungwiza locality, who are mainly informal traders who were not earning any income, so that they could supplement in their food and save more over the lockdown. What was not anticipated, and even Samantha always says that, is how it grew. Her first day, she started feeding 24 people, and this week we broke into the 2,000. Right, people who are being fed. So it's been an amazing journey. The trust has been formally formed. We did the bank account this past week. I'm a board trustee of the trust now, and I cannot stress this enough. What Samantha is doing is amazing. Let's not underestimate that. They feed children early in the morning, so you're averaging about 600 children being given porridge um, in the morning, and then in the evening from about 3 o'clock. So that's when we start doing the main meal. So the trust has grown tremendously. We've been getting a lot of great support internationally, to say the least, and it's been amazing. And now the question we keep on asking ourselves is, how do we evolve it? Because at some point when lockdown ends, because that was the objective, this was supposed to run over the lockdown period. When lockdown eventually ends, because you can't keep on feeding people into perpetuity. You have to feed them for a period of time. So when lockdown ends, then how else does the trust evolve to continue to help people become self-sustaining? That is the conversation we're now having, to look at progression. And even the other day when I was talking to Samantha, I was saying we have so many international NGOs working here. Probably all started just from the same idea. And we'd want to have something that helps people and that grows and outlives us, um, as an organization into 200 years, 300 years, helping people. So it's been a journey. It's been fantastic. You meet so many different cases. And I always love to give this example that people think that you're only feeding. But when you're feeding people, that's when you start hearing people's stories. You hear women who talk about abuse in homes. You hear about children not going to school. Last week, Sunday, we went to help a young man who stays with his mom. His mom has had a stroke on one side. And the most painful thing when we walked in was that they sleep on the concrete floor with three blankets in a one room. And they sleep concrete floor, shepherd, three blankets in this weather. And the next day we got one of our donors to give us a bed, some sheets, and some clothes. And the young man doesn't, even when you ask him what shoe size he wears, he says, I think I wear size 8 because I haven't worn a shoe in a long time. So these things come out because you start interacting with people you're feeding. Then you realize that it's bigger than us. Outside of feeding people, there are a lot more problems out there. So I give credit to Samantha for the sacrifice she has put into doing this. I'm humbled to be even asked to be part of it, as we're doing. And I'm hoping and praying that it will outlive us and continue to touch lives, and we get as much support from people so that we constantly grow the trust.
Masimba, I know through media there was some talk that at one time Chitungwiza municipality had actually threatened, if not closed, the place. Would you want to briefly just tell us what happened and how did you guys manage to resolve that issue?
So, like I said, it grew so quickly. We didn't anticipate to get to where we were, and along the journey, the council then wrote to us to say, look, you need to regularize your relief kitchen, and they'd asked us to then shut down until we then got the papers in order. What we then did is that we then engaged them and said, no, look, we understand, but we would kindly just ask for you to assist us through this process to do the registration. We'll register the trust formally on our own, but we would need a place to operate where you as council would know the places that are suitable for us to operate. So eventually we found a win-win situation. We only closed for 2 days because when they wrote the letter, they asked us to close immediately. And then we just said, no, it's fine. Let's just do as they're asking us to do, and we can engage them properly. And then we did that, and we engaged. We had a very fruitful conversation, and they came on board to say, look, we will help you we'll give you a location where you can operate from. Um, Whilst we formalized your trust, we formalized our trust a few weeks ago. We've sent the papers to them now to say, no, this is where we are. They're getting that place ready for us so that we can move. And because we engaged each other in a very nice way, they eventually just said, no, it's fine. You can operate until you move to the new place. So we found balance. We found a win-win solution, not for us, but more for the community. That is the ones that we are the beneficiaries. So it was good. We managed to become friends.
Masimba, my final issue or question that I want you to address now is not really a question. I know for such a noble cause, resources are not adequate, are not enough. You guys have got a lot more people that you want to assist. What's your appeal? What is it that you want to say locally, regionally, and internationally as far as KuchengetanaTrust is concerned?
So right now, the most important thing for us is ability to get food so we feed people. Um, if you look at Samantha's post now, when she gives a daily update, she now reports the quantities of food that we use to cook the meals. So that's the most important thing for us. We have people who love to donate money to us, and we are fine with that. That's not really a problem. But our main concern is getting the foodstuffs, your mealie meal, your tomatoes, your onions. We feed cabbages, chunks, beans, your cooking oil, and your peanut butter for the porridge, and your salts. So those are the things that we look at. Washing soap, so that, and dishwashing liquid, so we can pretty much run the kitchen effectively. That's our appeal. So soon we will obviously we'll come back, since we're now registered. We now got our logo going on. Our website should go live very soon. We got our emails just sorted. um, Very soon we'll be back to say to our donors and potential donors that, look, this is who we are, this is where we are. We are going to need as much support internationally for us to sustain this, until the lockdown is over. We Daily we always give an update of how many people we have fed. Or when every time we have major changes, if you look at my Twitter handle at Nematombo, I always give updates on the major administrative things that go on. And we do this so that the people who donate to us, and amazingly, I wish you knew how many people send my 10 bond eco cash. There's so many, but we appreciate that because we know that 10 bond can buy us, even if it's one sachet of Roeco. It's one sachet we didn't have the previous day. So we want people to feel like we're very open to them. This is their trust, all right? So we always give updates. We always want to come in. And we're very open. And we have people who come anytime to the trust. We don't even want to set appointments unless they want to see us personally. But when we're doing our feeding, people are allowed to come. We even have donors who just buy from like the UK. They just pay the companies that deliver the food, and we just see the delivery truck arriving. And that's how open we are. So we appeal to anyone and everyone who listens to this that, look, we are still going. We're going to still need your help. Please spread the word. Go on Twitter. You will see, we are on Twitter. They can just search the Chungiza Relief Kitchen. That's how I always tag it, to see updates, to see how they can contact us. Very soon we'll have all the formal handles since our logo is also done. And yeah, would really appreciate all the support we can get.
Masimba, it has been a pleasure talking to you. As I've always said to people, our global viewers, Masimba was with us when we started this journey. He is part of us. To Masimba, this is more or less like home. He is a business person. He is a director. He has also started helping on this cooperative social responsibility KuchengetanaTrust. We hope he's going to be back again talking to us in terms of how people can benefit from his advice. He's a guy who has been exposed. Masimba, thank you very much for the time that we've had. We look forward to have you again on the platform.
Thanks a lot, Nkomashepi. Take care and enjoy your Sunday. And thank you very much to all your viewers.
Thanks very much.